I'm here.
All right. We may get some music here playing, but good
That's all right.
evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Smack Talk Live. I am Coach along with Lone Wolf. And let's be honest, Lone Wolf, we're not going to talk too much, about the NFL tonight.
Yeah.
Kind of a kind of a kind of a weird championship Sunday. I would say,
Yeah.
dare to say. Um, People can talk about a couple of decisions LaFleur made. Yeah, I wasn't totally, the field goal. I get it in the situation. My question there would have been why go for the 2 point conversion instead of the extra point? That would have put you down by 7 with 2 minutes to go on a 4th and 8.
Mm-hmm.
You could go for it there. They don't get it. They're still 1st and 10 from their own 8-yard line.
Right.
Um, that is what it is. The I'm not gonna say that the stuff is staged. I can tell you right now, unequivocally, that the league office strongly implied to the officials they wanted the Buccaneers in because that last pass interference call, yes, it was pass interference, so don't be, yes, but there were about a half a dozen flags that were not called on the Buccaneers against the Packers, especially the most obvious and egregious one right before the half, where he pulls the shoulder pads down, intercepts the ball, and the Buccaneers end up scoring a touchdown.
Right.
I mean,
It was blatant. It was very blatant. Yeah.
is just so unbelievable. Um, and then after that game, you knew no matter what the Chiefs were going to win. The NFL wanted the Buccaneers Chiefs since the offseason.
Right.
Since the offseason, this is what the league wanted. Now, my question here for you, Lone Wolf,
Mm-hmm.
is that what fans want? Because I'll tell you right now, everybody I'm talking to, sick of Tom Brady.
Right.
We know he's going down as the greatest quarterback that ever played the game. We know that. We're tired of him. We want him to retire. We want him to go away. We're tired of him. After a point, you wear out fans. Um, you know,
Well,
it, it,
most fans, I would say.
well,
Yeah.
right, most fans, unless you're right now a Buccaneers
Right.
fan,
And I'm
uh,
sure the New England fans hate him,
right,
at this
exactly,
point. Right. I mean, a lot of the Packers fans didn't like Favre, especially when he was in Minnesota.
right.
So, it's probably no different with Brady.
So I did not listen to any sports media all week. Probably not going to listen to any next week because I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear how great Tom Brady is. Tom Brady threw 3 interceptions. They needed the officials to win that game.
Yeah.
Period.
I I I I kind of got tired of it during the cast itself. At one point, and I think I might have texted this to you, but at one point, Troy Aikman was going on and on about Tom Brady. And look, Troy Aikman doesn't like the Packers anyway. We know that. A lot of people have a lot of problems with Troy Aikman as it is anyway because he doesn't always come across as the most intelligent
Well,
analyst.
well,
So
I'm surprised you can even remember his name with all the concussions he had.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say he's had so many, but at one point I said literally I was looking at the TV and listening to what he said, and I'm like, look, if you love him so much, just go out there right now on the field and propose marriage to the guy
Yeah.
because the way you're talking about him is he's not even a human being anymore. He's transcended to a godlike figure in your eyes. The way they were talking about him, and let's face it. Okay, so a couple things here, Coach, to respond to what you had been asking. The reason that the Buccaneers won that game was not because of Brady. So I don't want people to sit
Absolutely
here and
not.
say that was the case. he didn't look that great. He threw
No.
3 interceptions. He looked flustered in a lot of different situations. He had a couple of situations where the Packers gave him the ability to succeed. Like at the end of the half, it was the wrong defense.
Yeah.
Kevin King was totally out of position. It was a horrible play by the Packers, not a great play by Tom Brady.
Right.
And so, you look at that, and I think the Packers afforded the opportunity to the Buccaneers to be able to win by not capitalizing off the turnovers. And because of the play of the defense, that was the most sacks that Aaron Rodgers has had all season and the most turnovers in a game, I believe, that the Packers had all season. They had 2. I don't think they've had more than that in any other game, outside of maybe the Buccaneers game earlier when Rodgers threw that pick six
Right.
and threw a different interception. So, I mean, really, that was, to me, those are the things that were the problem. Now, as for that pass interference call, I'll say this. Yes, I agree with you that it was a horrible call from the standpoint that the refs were letting them play all day long. Even Aikman at one point said, "Man, that was pass interference," but they didn't call it against the Buccaneers. And okay, so we know that, but the Packers should not have put themselves in a
Well,
position to allow that to be
well,
played.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
You look at the last flag though. The
Mm-hmm.
play is over. The ball's gone. The players are going back to the huddles, and all of a sudden a flag comes out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
Out
the
of
optics
nowhere.
of that are horrible.
I mean, come
Horrible.
on.
Yeah.
And so I get it. Yeah, the Packers should have never been in that situation.
Right.
But throughout that game, it's really hard because if you look at all the other games, even the games
Yeah.
that they lost, the Packers would get those calls where the receivers are being held or grabbed
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
that every team is trying to get, and they didn't get one.
Right.
I mean, there
They
was
did
one
not.
play where Devontae Adams got basically tackled before Rodgers threw the ball.
Yeah, that was one of those goal line plays. That was
Yeah,
a touchdown play. Yeah.
it's like what it's stuff like that. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because, to be honest,
Right.
we'll talk more in depth about the Super Bowl next week when actually game week.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, I'm rooting for the Chiefs to just piss pound the Buccaneers, because I don't like Tom Brady. I don't. Yes, he's a great car. I just don't like him. But he just walks around. And everybody's like, oh, look at it, what he did with Drew Brees at the end of after that game. Blah 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 blah. I think Tom Brady's smug. Hey, every time you look at him,
Very.
I just want to slap him in the face.
Yeah.
I'm not this. Oh, it's Tom Brady. Great. Oh yes, he's won the most Super Bowls of any quarterback that's ever played the game. He's gonna go down as the greatest that ever played.
Yeah.
I'll
He'll
tell
be
you
in
right
the Hall of
now.
Fame, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll tell you right now, there are people. If you rank all the great quarterbacks in NFL history, and you talk about who you would want on your team to start a franchise, Tom Brady's not the guy.
No.
He won a lot of championships, but he still would not be the top guy you pick to start a franchise. Now, I'm
No,
not saying
I would not.
I'm not saying Rodgers is, but I'm just saying you're going to get a couple of people, but
Sure.
if you're,
I'd probably take Joe Montana over him. You
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it is what it is. And we'll get deeper into this stuff, but we'll just wrap
Right.
this up, this part before we get into just kind of looking at our hierarchy of hires from last week, because now we have the final
Right.
hire. It was funny, because Aaron Rodgers came on, made a comment about he didn't, it's the future, blah blah blah, and everybody took this cryptic thought, oh, he's gone. Packers had to come on and say, we're not idiots. He's not going anywhere. He's
Right.
going to
Mark
be on
Murphy
the
was very clear about that.
I
Yeah.
mean, they're already talking contract extension to rework his deal to open up cap
Right.
space so they can keep these guys, because they
Yeah.
know they're not that far away from winning a Super Bowl.
Well, they're on the cusp. And look,
Right.
I was talking to a few other people this week, and somebody told me, well, look, Rodgers didn't need additional weapons this year. He made
Yeah, he
everything good.
does.
He elevated his play.
He does.
But, but think about that now. It didn't make a difference in the regular season, but did it matter last Sunday in the championship game? I
It
think it did.
it did because they bracketed Devontae Adams. Yes, he had some plays, and we had
Right.
the big play, big touchdown pass.
Well, we knew he would, and we
But
knew he
but
would.
but
Yeah.
here's the thing: you have another guy like Devontae Adams out there. You can't do that. You
No,
can't
you
double
can't.
you can't double team him. There's a lot of rumors that the Packers are probably going to be able to land Hunter from the Chargers at tight end, and if
Yeah.
if you can find some way to keep Tunyon and get Hunter, and then plus add another receiver, holy moly! Even if you lose Aaron Jones, you're still going to have AJ Dillon, who I thought looked really good in that game. The
Yeah, he
run
did.
where that
Yeah.
short run where he carried 3 Buccaneers for 4 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, that that
I
kid's
think they
gonna be
needed more of that. They didn't have
right.
enough of that in the
It,
game. They didn't run
and
the ball
it just
effectively. And don't get me wrong, Tampa's run defense is great, but
and it just
yeah.
seems as the season went on, Aaron Jones got dinged up in games a lot, and he was on the sidelines more and more.
Yeah. Well,
So
and that's what happened in that game. So
they,
not that that was.
they
I mean, that was a big hit, but still.
he wants a ton of money. The Packers are gonna be smart. They're probably not gonna pay him, which
Right.
most franchises don't pay running backs like they used to. So anyway, we'll get more into that once the offseason hits. But
Unless you're the
Packers,
Cowboys.
the Packers will be right in that mix
Yeah, they're in
again,
the mix. Yeah.
and we'll go from there. Um, so moving on to the NFL hires, we got our last hire, David
Yep.
Culley,
David
new head
Culley.
coach of the Texans. I texted you last night and then kind of botched the text, but this is he is the sacrificial lamb.
But still.
He is the sacrificial lamb for this franchise. This
Uh,
is a complete rebuild. Deshaun
yeah.
Watson, there's no way he plays a snap for the Texans ever again.
No.
No way. So
I
here's the thing.
totally agree.
You hire a consulting organization to kind of help you with candidates. You
Yep.
have your star face of the franchise asking you to consider Eric Bieniemy. There's been a push with everything going on in society with equality and all these different initiatives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's be honest, the Texans are probably were one of the worst franchises with this kind of stuff. Instead of, and I'm not saying they should have hired Bieniemy because he's African American or anything like that. He's a good coach.
Right.
He's a good coach. So you could have defused this whole situation with Deshaun Watson, gotten a really good coach, and started to put this stuff behind you. But you go hire an old white guy to be your coach.
Yeah.
Then
Well,
nobody,
and I saw something about him being a minority, so I was confused because somebody said something about that,
it
and
maybe he does, but
right, but nevertheless, I mean, let's just face it though. Look, putting that aside, he's 65 years old. He's never been a coordinator before,
right.
and he's been in the NFL for 27 years. I mean, I know he's got a lot of experience, but he's never coordinated anything. I really wonder why do you pick a guy like him who isn't young, vibrant, anything? I mean, maybe he's got a lot of energy, 65. I don't know. I mean, but he's really the most qualified guy out of everybody?
Well, here's the
Are you
thing,
kidding
and
me?
I just listened to some stuff here while getting ready for the show. They expect Romeo Cornell to stay on staff, and
Okay.
and um he's bringing in Lovey Smith to be on the
Oh,
staff.
jeez.
And
Lovey
then
just
and
got
then
fired. I mean,
now now and then Josh McCown has been hired as the quarterbacks coach, also interviewed for the head coaching job. Okay. They are the rumor is he is a short-term stop until Josh McCown is ready, kind of like Wade Phillips was with Jason Garrett in Dallas. So you
okay,
are this is this franchise, like I said,
this is awful.
this is worse than the Detroit Lions.
This is
This
this is
this is worse
terrible.
than the Detroit Lions. I mean, yeah, the Detroit Lions hired a psychopath as a coach. We're
Well,
talking about
yeah, and
biting
I'm
kneecaps off.
rescinding what I said last week after we listened to Beavis comment and
But
after a couple articles I've read over the course of the week about Dan Campbell.
but
Jeez.
but I would take Dan Campbell over David Culley. I mean, this is
I don't
just,
know, man. I don't know. The kneecap thing kind of was kind of freaky. I don't know. Well, but
but
you're right. I mean, either way, it's like it's kind of a horse apiece of how
I
bad
mean,
things
I
are.
mean, just looking at this, obviously this hire does not bump the Jets from the best hire, or to me,
Oh no, this means
actually
no question. Robert Saleh is the best of the crop,
right.
hands down. There's no
I
question
had
about
the
that.
Texans hire as the fourth because they hadn't hired anybody. I put them at seven now. I
Yeah.
that This is the worst hire. You now had Deshaun Watson's gone. He's not staying.
No.
He will not be in a Houston Texans uniform next week or next year. No way. There's no way. He will hold out and sit out
Hmm.
because
Oh, I
there's
guarantee. I totally agree with you. I don't think he's going to be there. I mean,
because you kept your president of football operations who has no right to have that job. You hire another Patriot personnel guy when you tried that and it didn't work. He goes out and hires a guy that's never been a head coach, was not on anybody else's list as a potential head coach, not endorsed by any of your players. You're keeping assistant coaches on staff from the old staff. You're not
right. This is
listening
not
to your
changing the culture in any
right. You're
way.
not changing the culture here. You
Yeah. I mean, and he has never, this guy, so I'm just looking at all the things about him. He's never been a head coach anywhere. He's never even been a coordinator at any position. Okay, let me take that back. He was the offensive coordinator at UTEP in 1989 to 1990. So I apologize. He has been a coordinator before at one point in his
well,
career.
look, if you can find out if he is a minority candidate, because
I believe so. I mean, everything
if
I'm
he
reading
is
now, it sounds like he's black. He's very light skinned, but apparently he is an African American. So I
okay,
mean,
well,
that's what it looks
I
like.
take
Yeah,
that back because he does not have the the melatonin in his skin that
yeah. I
makes
mean, it
him
just didn't
have.
look like it, I guess, when I first saw his picture. But yes, he is
Yeah,
an African American. But you know what? Here's the thing, Coach. I mean, like we talked about the race thing. So putting that aside, and whether
yeah,
they
right.
landed
Yeah,
a
that has
decent
nothing to
hire. I
do.
mean, yeah. I mean, but here's the thing. Do you think the Texans go out and hire this guy, and then they say, "Hey, see, look, we hired a minority coach. We're doing things right." Um, and this is where the problem comes in, and we talked about this. It doesn't matter if the person's a minority. I
Right.
would like to see more minority coaches, but what confidence do you have in this guy based on his record? I don't care if he's purple. He doesn't
Well,
look like he's going to be a good coach at all.
well,
Uh,
and the big thing people
he's got a
I
lot of
mean,
experience being a backup guy, but not the lead guy ever.
well, and people are hanging up. Oh, he was with Andy Reid for so many years. So what?
That
Andy
doesn't make him a
Reid
good
didn't trust
coach.
him to be
Yeah,
his offensive coordinator.
right.
He's never
That
injured
doesn't
himself.
make him a good coach. I mean, there's a lot of people that have probably coached
Right.
with Andy Reid for a
You
long
know,
time.
I still, again, I look at these hires. They're
There's
Robert
a lot
Sala.
of lack of experience on a lot of guys.
Well, it's just the people that got hired. You just look at experience that you would trust. You have
Right.
Robert Salo, who I would trust, and Urban Meyer. The rest of these
Yep.
guys are so inexperienced. And again, there's so many more qualified candidates out there. So
Well, and
many more.
that's just it. That's the problem. Like, I mean, why are you looking at a guy who, to me,
Who's
okay, so you've got,
65 years old?
yeah, yeah. Why are you hiring a guy like that and saying, okay, he's been an assistant for 27 years and now you think he's ready to be a head coach? I don't. This came out of left field, but the Texans, I don't know if this is totally surprising
No,
because they ignored their own search firm, like you said, and hired the GM they hired. I can't imagine that Deshaun Watson will be there next year at all. I just this is like the dagger to me
yeah.
in the nail in the coffin, the last straw, whatever you want to call it.
And the best thing Deshaun Watson can do is just not come out publicly and say anything. He
Yeah,
just tells his agent, "Get me out of there." You stay away
yeah,
from the facility. You don't get involved in team activities, and you just go. You just do your thing. You prepare yourself physically and mentally to go into next season, knowing that you may have to sit out.
yeah.
And financially, he can afford it.
I think he's fine. Yeah, yeah.
So this is just one of those things. This is one of those things where it's like, are you kidding me? Are you
Right.
kidding me? Um,
This when I saw this, I was incredulous. I was thinking to myself, okay, we talked about how bad the crop of NFL coaches have been in terms of what has been hired, but it's gotten worse.
yeah,
As we keep talking about, it's gotten worse. I mean, we disagree about a couple things. I think we disagreed about Arthur Smith, but but even that, you look at him and it's like after Robert Saleh, everybody is minimal experience or no experience at the NFL level, or crazy, or I mean that there's so much here that screams. It's almost like I wonder if there's a trend in hiring younger or less experienced coaches. Um, but this has gone even way farther than that. You're hiring guys who have been a coordinator for a year. You're hiring quarterback coaches. You're hiring guys who have never coached in the NFL. You're hiring coaches who have never been a coordinator or a head coach anywhere. I mean, what is it? What is going on with this? Why are franchises thinking, let's bet on this guy?
I don't know. I don't know. Um, I don't know. Uh, you know,
Yeah,
I'm at a loss for words. You know, it's amazing. Unless Eric Bieniemy turned people down,
right.
and that's never going to come to light. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
I would doubt that though.
but why?
Right? I mean,
I can see why you turned the Houston Texans job down.
well, yeah, them, yeah. I mean, he interviewed with everybody else though,
But
so
why? Again, you're telling me Dan Campbell's better than Eric Bieniemy.
absolutely not.
You're telling
Eric Bieniemy is a
you're
better
telling me
candidate
you're telling me
than
that Staley from the Chargers is better, more qualified than Eric Bieniemy. You're
Nick
telling me
Sirianni,
Sirianni from the Eagles,
David
Arthur
Culley,
Arthur Smith from the Falcons. That might be the only one you could argue.
right?
Urban Meyer,
I
Urban
might
Meyer,
argue that
great.
he's
Okay, yeah,
legit,
he's
but I'm not going to say he's better than Bieniemy necessarily.
right because the NFL is a totally different ball game than college.
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Urban Meyer. Yeah. I mean, you might say, yeah, because yeah, he's had a lot of success in college, but again, we've had seen a lot of coaches that
Right.
transition and they don't transition well. And
The only one, and you could
yeah,
still say Eric Bieniemy is still more qualified than him, was Robert Saleh. Eric
right,
Bieniemy's been a coordinator longer than Robert
longer.
Saleh.
Yeah,
So that's that's probably the one where you could even say Eric Bieniemy's more qualified than him.
right.
Now, I personally like defensive coaches more than offensive coaches. So,
Yeah,
me,
yeah. And I would still say if Eric Bieniemy had been hired, I think to me it would be Robert Saleh, Eric Bieniemy,
yeah,
and then go from there, whoever the third coach
right,
would be. But I would look at it that way because of a lot of factors. But
right. So,
he wasn't hired. I, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Coach. Like, what the heck is going on? And I know that there's some retreads that were out there, and that certainly didn't happen this time with retreads. But a guy like Leslie Frazier didn't get a shot. A guy like Todd Bowles didn't get a shot. And a couple of those guys, maybe you don't want to put them back in an organization to do it, but they've already been head coaches. They've already had some success as a head coach. Certainly, they've had success as defensive coordinators. I don't know.
yeah, I don't
These
know either.
guys, though,
There's
ooh,
definitely some, things that are, and this is an ownership issue. That
yeah,
this is not a league
absolutely,
issue. Um, yeah, the league can do more to, get more minority candidates, in positions to get these jobs. But when you got, when you got things like this going on, and like you said, yes, David Culley is a minority candidate, which again, I apologize because I didn't have time to read any articles on this. This happened
right.
yesterday.
Yeah, I
And
wasn't sure, and then I
to be
looked
honest,
it up.
I'm
Yeah,
kind of boycotting the NFL right now, kind of bitter. But
yeah,
um, but even so, this is totally out of left field. His name was never even brought up as in consideration for a
right,
job.
exactly. Yep. And then
And then
all of
he
a
gets hired.
sudden, hey, we're gonna hire this guy. What? Why?
So
Yeah,
this is going to be interesting. I think that the Texans are in a world of hurt. This is going to be a complete rebuild there. They could be the worst team in the league next year. You're going to lose Deshaun Watson. You're going to lose J.J. Watt. Your free agents are not going to resign. This is a train wreck. Um,
yeah.
I'm going to insert dumpster fire with the Houston Texans. Take that off the New York Jets and put it with the Houston Texans right now. This is a dumpster fire.
well, and all we needed to do was change one person to flip the script on the Jets. I
Right,
mean, we
right.
figured that whole thing out already. We know that that's different. I can't disagree with you. I mean, it looks to me like the whole thing is going to fall apart. And isn't this weird, Coach? I mean, you're talking about the Texans. They're in the same division as the Jaguars, and they could be worse than the Jaguars next year.
They're going to be worse than the Jaguars next year.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Urban Meyer will get a handful of wins next year just because he is a quality motivator.
Right.
And I don't, it's great. Okay, he can, Cully can command a locker room. Okay, great. So command away. That doesn't relate to success on the field. And I didn't have a lot of time. Like I said, I didn't listen to my normal stuff this week. So my Beavis comment of the week is kind of weak, but
Okay.
it's kind of funny too.
Okay.
Um, because they compare David Culley to another coach. So, but anyways, we'll get into that at the end of the show. So, um, that's about it for the new hires
Yeah.
for the show. Um, I know you wanted to cover a little bit of the NBA since we have yet to talk about NBA.
We haven't talked about it much. No, no.
Well, we talked about the Nets briefly
Right.
um, after the James Harden trade. Um, you know, it it's interesting because they trade for Harden, and then Kyrie Irving comes back, and they lose 2 games, right?
Right.
And um, yeah, and right now they're sitting at 12-8. They've won 3 in a row. Um, but it's going to be interesting here um, because there's eventually going to be, I think, when they hit a streak where they might lose 3 out of 5,
Couple games.
4
Yeah.
out of 6, something like that, that um, you're going to get some kind of finger pointing at individuals um, because you're not always going to get those big three um, aren't going to get their
To have success. Yeah.
they aren't going to get their stats, and and unfortunately, I'll just say it. You look at those individuals; they've always been kind of more me oriented. Um, you
Absolutely.
you know, and not saying they can't change, but
Hmm.
they're professional athletes. And okay, yeah, they won last night, but you look at that they had to it went into overtime against the
Yeah,
Hawks.
it was an overtime win against the Hawks. Yeah.
You
Who
beat
are
the
admittedly better, but I mean,
right. And then people say,
what did we talk about, right? This is the greatest big three
yeah,
ever.
greatest big three ever.
Yeah.
And then you beat the Bucks on end of the game.
Yeah, two
Last
pointer.
second
Yeah, 2 points
free.
and
That's
yeah.
not going to happen every time. It's
Well,
not
and then they
like
lost to the Cavaliers 2 times in a row.
right. It's not like they're blowing people away. Um,
No.
so this is going to be very, very interesting as we move forward, because I don't think long term that this thing can last. And here's the thing: if this kind of experiment doesn't work, both Durant and Harden can walk in 2 years.
Yeah.
If that happens, the Nets are done because they traded away 6 draft picks.
Right.
I I
Well, they
don't.
don't. Yeah, they don't have any capital. I mean, they went all in on this thing.
Yeah, and so
Absolutely.
looking at this last game,
Yeah.
Durant 32, Harden 31, Irving 26. Their next highest guy, they had Bruce Brown then with 12, Jeff Green with 11, DeAndre Jordan with 11. You basically have to have Durant, Harden, and Kyrie Irving average double doubles all year.
Yeah. I mean, and you need them really. You almost need them in the 30-point range all the
Right.
time.
Every
And
game.
look, coach. I mean, looking at their stats, they're 25th in the league in points against.
Right.
So they score. Don't get me wrong. They're one of the top teams in scoring in the league. But if you have an off night or somebody plays good defense against you, well, you're going to give up a lot of points because your defense sucks. And the last time I checked, that's not a formula for winning an NBA title. So,
Right.
um,
You know,
yeah, that's going to come home to roost at some point. That's gonna hit you.
yeah. And and the people they haven't been talking about the Bucks, which I think is a good thing for the Bucks
It is. I think so too. Yeah.
because now the pressure's all on the Nets.
Right.
It's not on the Bucks anymore. They don't need to convince Giannis to say he's already signed. And if they were to lose, people in free agency, they're gonna have the cap space to go and sign somebody. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the pressure's on the Nets. the Bucks have quietly climbed back up to, a game back of the
They're
Sixers
second in the East, I think,
for,
right
for
now.
the
Yeah.
for the number one spot. They're
Hmm.
finally, I think, they're still figuring out all these new pieces.
Right.
And once they
Right.
figure
They're
that
not
out,
quite as good defensively as I think we'd like them to be.
right.
Offensively, they're still great, but yeah, yeah,
So it's going to be interesting. You look, probably the top five teams in the East are good. Um,
hmm,
you know, so the Pacers are kind of a surprise at 11 and
yeah.
7. Um, but we'll see how that unfolds. But then, once you get past the five, you got the Cavaliers at 9 and 9, which is actually quite surprising. The
I
Hawks
think
9
so
and
too.
the Hawks 9 and 9, but then you got the New York Knicks at 8 and 11 would be in the playoffs right now.
Right, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
Well, and really everybody else in the East, some people are saying the Heat are already done after being, as good as they were last year, but I don't want to count anybody out there,
well,
in the East.
they're
I mean,
only
really.
they're only 2 wins back of the eighth seed in the
I
East.
know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I
But
don't think they're
they have lost
done.
four in a row.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if
now five. I think they lost tonight too. So
so if they continue to lose, they could be looking to unload some people.
they
Um,
could
and I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks try to pull off a trade for uh,
another piece here.
another
Yeah.
piece there. Um,
I do like the Hawks. We talked about this before, and they were that team. We had to pick a team last
yep,
year, and they were my team that I picked, and at least right now, it kind of looks like that's bearing some fruit. They're not going to win a championship or anything, but it looks like they're at least trending in the right direction as a
right.
franchise.
So going over to the Western Conference, how about the Utah Jazz? Winners of
Yeah,
10 in a row in first place in the West. Um, they had some nice pieces, but nobody expected this. And then you got, obviously the Lakers, the Clippers, the
right.
Nuggets. The Warriors have quietly climbed back
Yep,
in
they're back in the mix again.
in
Yep.
the mix. People are saying, "Oh, look how bad their starting lineup is." I'm not counting Steve Kerr and Steph Curry out.
Right.
I'm just not. They'll probably pull off a trade here to get another scorer. They do need help in their
They
starting
do.
five,
Yeah.
but as long as you have Steve Kerr and Steph Curry, um, I, I'm not counting them out. Really, probably the biggest surprise here is the Memphis Grizzlies at 7 and 6. Um, the
Yep.
Suns have climbed back they've lost three in a row. But they were my team. Um,
Yep.
they got to get some things figured out there. I think they can still make the playoffs, but you can't lose many more in a row here if you expect to be in that mix. But then Houston Rockets are hanging around,
Right.
the Oklahoma City, but then you got, you know, the Mavericks. How about that? That's a surprise that the Mavericks
I
are
think
still.
so too. They're 8-10 there, and yeah, they're not playing well. I mean,
Yeah,
they're not good in almost any category when you kind of break them down from a statistical standpoint. They don't score a lot. They're kind of middle of the pack defensively. They don't rebound particularly well. There's a lot of things there that just right now they're not doing well all the way across the board.
right.
So they're not horrible, but they're just not doing most things well. They're in the middle of the pack or lower middle for those
And, and
categories.
and my only thing there is, everybody talked about how great Luka Doncic is.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
if he's that good, you're not sitting at 8 and 10
right.
because unlike the East, you have to be above 500 to make the playoffs in the West.
Yeah, you have to do that in the West or you're not making it. You
So,
know.
um,
Yeah.
they need to get that stuff figured out there fast, um, or their season is going to be over. Um, then obviously you got the bottom of the barrel. I mean, the Kings, they're 7 and 10, not too bad. New Orleans 6 and 10, but then the Timberwolves 4 and 13. You go in the
Yeah.
East, the Wizards. How about the Wizards 3 and 11? Oof.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
they don't really have anything left. I mean, they're just not good all the
the
way across the board. They're
and
just
and
not.
you know and they're probably going to trade Beal away, I believe.
I would
Um,
think so. Yeah.
there's no point of keeping him around. You are not, going to be good for very long or for a while.
Well, I
Uh,
think I think you're at a point with them. They got rid of Wall and uh, they just need to retool this thing. Rebuild. Um,
they're constantly rebuilding.
they are. I agree. But they need to figure it out. I mean, that's the thing. If you're gonna do it, commit to rebuilding and then do it. So
Right.
there
So
could be a coaching change there. I mean, we talked about coaches on
yeah.
the hot seat, right? I
Right.
don't
We'll,
know.
we'll get into that once
Yeah.
after the Super Bowl. We'll start delving into the NBA coaching hot seat, because the NBA is a little more knee jerk reaction than the NFL
Right.
is with that. The last thing on the NBA, because you're starting to see this a lot,
Hmm.
is delays of games, COVID issues popping up in the NBA, and talk about possibly going back to a bubble, or like regional bubbles. Um, so my question here is, so you look at this, okay, the NBA was able to do it in a bubble successfully, the NHL in a
Right.
bubble successfully. It'll be interesting to see how the NHL does, because they're now playing two, which we'll get into in a couple of weeks. We'll start talking about the NHL. So they really haven't had anything reported yet. But then you look at, like, the Major League Baseball early on had major COVID issues going on. Then now the NFL, though they had some COVID issues, never canceled the game. They only had really 1 week where they had to shift a game a lot, which did impact, 2, 3 weeks, but only for
Hmm.
a couple of teams. Why do you think the NBA is having a harder time with um, the COVID now compared to the NFL or in the bubble?
Well, I think when they had the bubble, they clearly established what was going to happen, where people were going to be, and how it was going to be managed and controlled. And then I think they really kind of looked at it and pushed the issue with the season this year, because we talked about how they were going to potentially start the season in January. But both of us, I think, were a little surprised when they said, nope, we want to start this in December before Christmas. So I think they kind of rushed into it and didn't have the same plan that they had when they did the shortened season in the bubble. Because I don't know if they thought maybe that they could do any of the season in a bubble. I'm not sure, but it doesn't seem like they approached it with the same type of plan. And now you're seeing that was a mistake, because there's a lot of different players that have been affected by this. I think they said over 100 players, maybe even almost 150. I'm not sure, but the numbers were pretty high in terms of how many people have been afflicted with the virus in the NBA, and what this is causing and how this is changing the scheduling. And it's been really really hurting the NBA. Uh, you see some of the records there. They don't have the same record because they haven't been playing some of these games because they've been rescheduled because of some of the things that have
Right.
changed. So I look at that, and I would hope that the NBA would consider a proposal to do something like you mentioned, which do a regional bubble, have that. I mean, it looks like they're playing back to back games with some teams. Maybe you do that a little bit more, and you're not playing some of the same or different competition. You're playing some of the same teams. If you have to do that, you have to do that, just to make sure that you can actually have a full bevy of games. Um, I would like to see them approach this thing with a solid plan. so that they can continue on. Because right now it's trending towards out of control.
Right. And that's the um, you know, um, the issue here that they could face. They could face having to, put a break on the season again, which, you know, could definitely is definitely going to impact them. Um, so, they only came out with the first half schedule,
Yeah.
um, 30 some games. So we'll see, um, what happens there. Um, just quick looking at, some other news, obviously looking at the Bucks, because that's, our home team.
That's our team.
Um,
Yeah.
there, and this was just today, this morning, that, and again, I'm not a big fan of Max Kellerman, but he is, has come out and said that the Bucks should trade for Bradley Beal.
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, Big Three can kiss Milwaukee's butt.
Yeah.
You put Beal, Giannis, Holiday, Middleton, and Lopez on the court. Whew, that five, and then you got some nice pieces coming off the bench.
Well, and I think like Portis has been great. That was a great move. You don't talk about some of these guys, but Portis has been a really solid player for the Bucks, and having DiVincenzo still on the roster, he's averaging about 10 points a game, about 4 rebounds. I mean, a guy like him. And so, yeah, if you were to add a Beal into that mix with those guys coming off the bench, yeah,
Right.
that would be an amazing lineup. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting if they can pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
That um, would be huge. I do think they need to make another trade. Even if you already gave up assets, down the line here the next couple of years. But here's the thing: you think about it. You have Giannis. You're probably not going to be in a position in the first round where you're picking up a guy that's going to be an impact NBA player right away, anyways in the first round for the length of Giannis's contract extension. So if you give up those draft picks, is it that big of a deal?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you got to be assuming that, okay, we're going to win a lot of games during the course of
Right.
the year. You should. I mean, that's the goal, and you have a player of his caliber, you should be in that. You should be in that range. So yeah,
Right.
it
You
doesn't
should not.
impact you in the same way. Yeah.
It's not like you're trading away lottery picks.
Right. Right.
You know.
Yeah. The
Uh,
Bucks. If the Bucks are picking in the top five, then there's a problem.
yeah, if they're being in the top
Yeah.
five with Giannis and the roster they have,
Yeah.
somebody got hurt.
Right. Right.
So,
Or the
um,
coach needs to get fired because
yeah,
they're
or
just that bad. I mean, they
yeah,
just yeah.
and that could also be a domino that falls. And I think the Bucks are going to tread lightly with that because I know Giannis was not happy when Jason Kidd got fired
Right.
because he wasn't talked to about the decision. I think after they hired whatever is Budenhauser,
Yeah.
um,
It's
and he
hard to
and
say
he
his last name.
and he met with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was fine, but he's just a guy that wants to be kept in the loop with the organization. And any trade that the Bucks are thinking of, they're going to talk to Giannis first.
Right.
Okay, Houston Texans, take note. At least just talk to your stars.
Well, and that's the
Just talk to
problem,
them.
right? So they said they talked to him as if they were going to involve him.
Yeah,
Don't do that if you're
yeah.
going to not involve him later. I mean, that
So,
was a horrible mistake, by an organization that it makes no sense. Yeah, and
right.
I'm not a big advocate for giving players a lot of power in those situations. But if you say that you're going to talk to them, then you better follow through because if you don't, then this is what happens. You make them bitter. And now you're paying the price for it. And maybe you
Right.
don't care as an organization, but you should, because you're alienating fans, you're alienating a star, and you're making yourself worse.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Anything else on the NBA, Lone Wolf?
Well, I was just going to say, the last thing, if the NBA is going to do something, now to me would be the time to do it. There isn't as much of an eye on the NBA because there's still a lot of buzz with the NFL right now, right?
Right.
And the Super Bowl's coming up, and that's dominating still a lot of the headlines. If the NBA is going to make some moves or they're going to do something, now would be the time, because I think less people are talking about COVID storylines or NBA changes or things like that. That'll ramp up after the Super Bowl is over. So now would be the time for the NBA to make some decisions on that, I think, if they want to keep the kind of the stories away from the main headlines.
Right.
But
So, all right. So moving on, and we don't get too political on the show.
yeah,
Um,
try to avoid that if we
we
can.
try to avoid it because at least we are both um, open-minded to other people's political views. We have our disagreements on certain things,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, we don't sit there and do what other people do. I'm not like outside your house trying to burn it down because you don't agree with me on certain things, and
Right.
vice versa. You know,
Yeah.
so um, you can actually you know disagree with somebody and still be friends with
It's
them.
okay to do
Yeah.
that, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
world, it's okay not to have the same political views on everything.
Right.
There are things we agree on. There's things we don't agree on, which is what it is. But anyways,
It's fine.
this is
Yeah.
this is a big one. Um, and I know I have a very strong opinion on this.
Yeah.
Um, I'll say it. President Biden, first day, executive order signed, indicating that any school that receives federal funding, okay, and that basically includes every public school, must
Right.
either allow biological boys who self-identify as a girl onto girls' sports teams or face administrative action from the education department. Um, that's huge.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I'm all for advocating for individuals that are transgender, that equality and things like that. This um, is not going to be good for women's sports, for girls' sports at all. Um, you are now, I have a concern what this is going to lead to, and people can call me crazy. Oh, that won't happen. This will happen. You
Yeah.
will have boys that indicate they identify as a girl so they can compete against girls and win.
Oh, I don't think you're crazy at all. I think that's absolutely going to happen because people look for an advantage no matter what, and they're going to abuse the spirit of the order to
Right.
get their own advantage. Yeah.
And there was a case, I forgot the state, I think it was in Massachusetts. It was in the Northeast. Two high school girls sued because the state association allowed two transgender, you know, boys to girls,
Yep.
to compete on the girls' team, even though they're biologically male. They were not. I don't know if they were on hormones or not. I can't remember. This was a year or so ago, and the court said, "Yeah, you can't do that. That's not fair." Um, because of those two transgender girls were beating them.
Right.
It wasn't really much of a competition. Um, I and I would be okay with that, yeah, of a transgender girl being on a girls' sports team as long as they are on hormones that block the testosterone development within the body.
Right.
Because the testosterone development in the body creates an unfair advantage for a male athlete. That's why male athletes have more muscle mass, they're more explosive, and they're stronger because of the levels of testosterone that the body produces.
Right. And we're saying this because it's factual. It's not because
Right,
there's a gender preference or something. This is just scientifically proven and
right.
factual.
Um, so if you're going to do that, then you almost have to say, okay, if we're going to allow this, we need to allow female athletes to use steroids.
Yeah.
But getting back to the issue at hand, um, again, I'm not going to get into my political beliefs. This is a
Right.
very bad policy. This is a very bad thing to do. Um, people can say, "Oh, this is a great victory for the transgender community." Okay, my issue, we've kind of in a society have gone to not what's great best for all, but what's best for certain groups. Um, you know, Title IX was there to give a equal opportunity for everybody to participate.
Hmm.
And for the most part, it has worked. People kind of don't actually understand the entire law of Title IX because they'll look at a school and say, well, there's more boys sports than girls sports. That's not what the law says.
No, it's not.
It's the number of opportunities. So the way it works is there's roster spots. It goes by roster spots, and there's so many roster spots that are given to each sport, and those have to be equal. And that's why you see a lot of, especially high school, saying if football, but football is not just a male sport. They allow girls to play football if they choose to. So those
Right.
roster spots can be slotted into girls' sports. So then it goes down to the other sports. So the law is more complex than just looking at the number of sports teams. Again, this is mucky
Hmm.
because what you're transgender. I get it. You identify as a female, but if you still have the muscle mass of a male athlete and legally, biologically, you're still legally a male, even though you identify as a female, you should be competing against males.
Right. Right.
That,
And,
that, that,
and I agree with that. I mean that's it. You can say what you are from a certain standpoint, but there's a competitive advantage that's afforded to you by doing something like that. And I agree with equality. I want people to feel like they have those opportunities, but I think by doing this, you're taking opportunities away from girls and from women who have been struggling for equality for so long. And that's what I've read a couple articles by a couple different women who have said this is impacting our own struggle for equality
Mhm.
because of what you're doing. And now you're going to make girl athletes or female athletes feel like they're getting the shaft in a way, because they're not able to compete against someone who has an advantage over them.
Right,
I mean, I think you have to make it less about gender or less about that than you do about where do they fit from a competitive standpoint, you know, like you were saying.
right.
So,
And I just have this article up. It's from um, WSJ, the opinion page, talking about this. And it was so it doesn't name it
yeah, I
what,
read that article. Yeah.
but it identifies there's two biological males that
Mm-hmm.
were transgender to compete in the Connecticut State track and field against girls.
Right.
Neither of them for the as a in the boys competition were a top sprinter, but they're consistently in the top spots against as girls. They eliminated girls from advancing to their regional championships, which didn't allow them to get scouted or possible opportunities for scholarships and trophies, and then they set records that no girls probably are ever going to meet.
Right.
So
I mean, how is that fair to the girls that are involved? So you look at it, and those girls who had a possibility of being able to potentially get a scholarship or something along those lines. I mean, what opportunities are they not being presented because of something like that when they were getting scouted? And I don't want to take anything away from someone who is in that situation. Um, but I think you have to look at it and say, okay, competitively, where do they best fit? And this isn't working. It's not going to work, and it's going to create a lot of issues. A lot of states are going to push back on this, and they'll
the
push back rightfully so, not from a position of bias, but from a concern, maybe a concerned parent, concerned person standpoint of, like we just talked about, denying women opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
well, and I'll tell you already, and I believe it's either North Dakota or Montana.
Mm-hmm.
They just passed a bill banning this exact same thing from their high school sports. So this is going to the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
And I sure hope, and again, I'm not going to get into, well, it's only because they're majority, blah, blah, blah. I don't care.
yeah,
This should be struck down.
right.
This should be struck down. Um, and my one thought is this, okay, if you don't want to compete against males, and you should not compete against females because you have a physical advantage, create a third category, a transgender category. There are enough individuals that are transgender. You could do that. Um, you know, I think that would be a solution here that would give everybody a kind of a peace of mind that they're trying to do what's best for everybody.
Yeah,
But
and I don't know. To me, I don't know if that's the right way because you you don't want people to feel excluded, and if you do that, you're kind of saying, well, let's segregate them to another area. And I know that that's not what you're intending. Obviously, that's not what you're saying. It's just I don't know if people would misinterpret it as that.
but but this current executive order is excluding girls.
Well, it is. I agree. Yeah, it is.
So,
This is not
but
the solution.
you,
Yep.
you're not going to make anybody happy.
Yeah.
Uh, again, it is what it is.
Right.
When
I
it
mean, there were
comes,
a lot of things that, politically, maybe they were good. It just depends on your perspective and what happened. This particular one, I mean, I just didn't agree with it. I like the intent. The intent is to right some of what I feel were some of the wrongs about what policy was previously, and how people were treated. But this isn't really the way to go about that. I mean, equal protection under the law when it comes to healthcare and it comes to
Mhm.
education and other things, I think is important and needs to be there. But this isn't about that. It's about imbalance that's
Yeah.
created in sports, and you
Well,
have to look at it from that standpoint.
and part of this order is if I go into school tomorrow
Yeah.
and one of the boys in our school indicates I'm going to start identifying as a female.
Yeah,
Hasn't started to transition or hasn't started anything like that. We have to allow him to change and utilize the women's locker room.
right, right.
Okay. I have a teenage daughter. If that happened in my daughter's school, I'd be throwing a hissy fit.
Yeah. I don't want those guys in my
Because
daughter's
I'll tell you
locker
right
room.
now, there are
Sorry.
there are messed up people out in the world. Yes, even teenage boys that are gonna do that just so they can be in the girls' locker room.
Right. They're going
And,
to take advantage of it just so they can be in there. Yeah, exactly.
and that's the thing, anybody out there with a daughter that has ambitions of being a great athlete
Right.
should be very, very worried about this. Um, and you can't say, well, it's track and field. No, no, this is anything. This is any sport.
Right. It applies to anything. It's happened in track and field, but it doesn't mean it can't happen in any
Right.
other sport. Yeah, yeah.
It can happen in basketball. What changes for an individual playing basketball and he's riding the bench as a junior? All of a sudden he's like, I'm a just identify as a female. He goes on the girls basketball team, starts and just crushes everybody
Right.
because he's physically stronger.
And that's when you'll see that in high school. You'll see that change, and that advantage will play out. And that's I agree, and that's unfortunate too, because you look at girls sports in high school. What what purpose do they serve? I mean, a lot of times they keep people in a good social circle. They give you an opportunity as a kid to make a lot of friends. There's a lot of positives about sports. Um, yeah. Well, and I think that it's taking it too far. That's really what it is. I think it's taking a step too far, and it wasn't the right decision to make. It was the intent maybe had been good, but the decision in the end is going to cause a lot more problems than are necessary.
Yeah, exactly. And that's fine if you wanted to have like an open debate about it and
Yeah.
maybe do some reform to the laws
Right.
and how things are done. I'm okay with that. But when you just say, this is how I feel it should be done, and you just sign an order saying, it's done without even considering the impact on all the young girls out there that are going to have opportunities wiped away. Um,
Yeah.
that I have an issue with. And maybe who knows? Maybe if I wouldn't have had a daughter, I wouldn't be thinking this way. But once you have a daughter, this stuff, hits home, and
Right.
you think a different way out there. Um, so I don't know. I'm at a loss for words on a lot of stuff tonight because
Yeah, I know. Me
it,
too.
it
It's hard. I mean, and I look at it, okay. So I mean, this is public funding. My daughter is in gymnastics, which is obviously a private club. So they can accept whomever they want, but if this continues, what happens if somebody says, "Well, I want to be part of that club and identify as a girl," and challenges it if they're not allowed to be part of it? Then what happens? I mean, it keeps kind of going to the next step, to the next step, to the next step, and I think that would give them a different advantage. I mean, look, this is gymnastics. There's things
right.
that um, girls have certain flexibility that guys don't necessarily have. When it gets to a certain age, there's more strength-based things for gymnasts. But nevertheless, would there be an advantage for a guy being in a girls' gymnastics team because of that? There may
Or
be. So I,
or
I
or
just
how
wonder
about
how far it goes.
or how about this, Lone Wolf? What if a female gymnast is you know, okay, right?
Hmm.
identifies as a male and goes and dominates the male gymnastics because, like you
Sure.
said, more flexibility.
Yeah.
They can do more dynamic things.
Yeah. It can
Than,
cut both ways. Yeah.
right. So again, I brought that up because we talk about transgender girls, boys to girls
Yeah.
competing in girl sports, but it can go the vice versa. And I'm waiting
Sure.
for that to happen when all some people are like, whoa, 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 we can't allow that. Well, yeah, you have to. Per
Right.
what
Yeah, yeah. If you're
per what the
allowing one, you
president
have to
has
allow the
signed,
other. I mean, I
you
don't
have
necessarily
to
agree
allow
with it,
it.
but if you're going to allow one, you allow the other. Yeah.
So,
I don't think it's good either way, personally.
right, I don't agree with it. Again, we are both against this.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I'm I don't care who the president is. I'm strongly against executive orders. Every president
Yeah.
utilizes them. So when they say, "Oh, I didn't know," every president utilizes them. They,
Right.
I don't agree with any president utilizing them because
Because the last one did, and now this one
right,
did. So
and
it's just
and the
and they
next
have for
one's
a while,
going
but yeah.
to, and
Right.
blah blah blah. So I don't agree with it because this isn't necessarily what the people want. Did not go in front of the House and the Senate and kind of go through everything and get, the elected officials, to kind of sign off on this. You just did it. Um, but again, that's getting political. So,
It is a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
so,
I mean, I
uh,
look at it and I see that, the issue is some people are saying, well, that they're identifying one way or the other. I guess we have to look at it as though we have to be fair to everybody involved. We can't just say, well, this one person has been disadvantaged, so everybody else has to pay the price because they've been disadvantaged. We wouldn't do that in other situations. So now we're doing it for this person because
right.
and that just seems unfair to me. That seems unfair. And that's why, I mean, we've got some comments here, and I would say, for what we're talking about, to me, I think it's just the biggest thing is we're creating an unfair advantage when there shouldn't be, and society is maybe taking this a little bit too far. You know, we're
Right.
taking it a little too far and saying, okay, there's a minority, and we have to make that better for this minority, but we're going to do it in this way, which affects all these other people, and it's not right.
And
What's the
we're
right way to
talking
go about it?
right, and we're talking about this, from a sports perspective because this is a sports
Right.
show.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
but the
Yeah,
executive order goes much farther than that.
it
Basically,
does. Yeah.
basically, it's saying, Lone Wolf, if me or you, we go out to Vegas when this stuff's done. We go out to Vegas, and all of a sudden we're like, you know what? We are going to identify as females on this trip.
Right.
You have
Right.
to allow us to go into the women's bathrooms. You have to allow us to go into the women's changing rooms. You
Right.
can't stop us because of this executive order. We
Right.
don't have to have any documentation stating that we
No,
are
I just need to
currently in
say that that's the
transition,
case.
that we're
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
hormones, and we're actually transitioning. All we have to do is say we identify as a female. We don't even have to dress as a female.
Well, and that's the underlying problem to this situation is you got it. You just said if a guy says that, maybe there's something that he's got a screw loose or something. But maybe you've got a guy who's just like, oh, well, I want to go in the girls' locker room, so I'm going to
Hmm.
take advantage of this situation and be like, yep, I'm a girl. And what do you do to prove that that's the case? So I mean, do you have to establish criterion and say, you know, um,
But you can't. You legally can't. The
yeah,
executive order doesn't allow. There is no wiggle room with the executive order, and that's a major issue. The comment, here, sexual assault cases are going to go up. They can. They could definitely go up.
yeah,
Um, especially you look at locker room settings. You know,
right,
um, you look at a locker room setting, all of a sudden you have females changing in a individual that it says they identify as a female goes in there because they want to, you know, get a rise, and all of a sudden, you know, everybody thinks, oh, they have to, you have to touch for sexual assault. You don't have to touch anybody for that for it to be sexual
No,
assault. It can
no, you
be
don't.
comments. It can be anything.
Right.
Um, oh, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
You
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
have females going into the men's locker room.
And doing the same
They
thing,
do the
right?
same
Yep.
exact thing.
Ogling,
Right.
whatever. Yep. Yeah.
And it's this is opening up a Pandora's box. And I really, it's let's put it this way: it's gonna take. There's gonna be lawsuits here. Um, there's gonna be, and it's more, I think, going to be our White House administration suing states for banning this same thing because states are individually banning it.
Yeah,
And
they're going out right now and just saying, nope, we're not allowing it.
right,
Yeah.
they're passing the law saying you can't. Biological boys cannot compete in girls' sports,
Right.
and vice, all this different stuff. So the administration is going to sue because of this executive order. It's going to go through the court system, and then it's going to, because even if the courts initially side with the White House, there's going to be appeals, and it's going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And this is good.
They're going to have to decide on it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, private businesses don't have
Right.
to,
And they don't have
per
to. Yeah, and
per
they
the
won't have
executive
to. And I
order.
think you're absolutely right about that. They're going to say this is our policy as a company or as a business, and we won't allow anything other than that.
Right, but per the executive order, it wants to enforce the Supreme Court 2020 decision of Bostock versus Clayton County,
Right.
in which um, there was they cannot, nobody can um, be limited or segregated from bathrooms, locker rooms, and dress code, um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's employers. But I'm sure you're going to have attorneys that expand that to private businesses. So that's why I said this is gonna get
Yeah,
ugly.
it'll
All
go.
the
I
way up
mean,
to
a lot of
court.
private businesses get around that by having a unisex bathroom.
Right.
So they just avoid that issue or try to avoid that issue by doing it that way. But you're right. I think that the private business will push back on it. But you may have someone who pushes the issue and says, nope, they didn't have that available. I had to go in this bathroom, blah, blah, blah. And then a lawsuit stems from that, which is counterproductive for everyone. It's just not a good idea. More litigation in society is not a good thing.
No,
I don't think.
we've turned into a
Anyway,
society of
yeah,
litigation.
yeah,
That's unfortunately that's where we're at.
yeah.
Again, getting little
A little off the sports
political
aspect.
here.
Yeah, right.
Um, so final thoughts on this. Um, Again, as my daughter, was more into other school related activities than sports now. Um, but I coach female athletes, girls track, and this is a lot. How do I go about motivating the a young girl
Yeah.
that to try and train her hardest than all just to be go up against somebody that is a biological male, say in the 100-meter dash, you run a sub 13 as a girl, it's pretty good, and this kid's running a sub 12 because they're biological male. Right? How do you
Yeah, I mean, what do you say?
justify that and
Next time,
explain this
keep at it,
to
kiddo,
to
or
these
something. I
girls?
mean, yeah,
Yeah, so it's one of those things where we definitely have to take a look at as a society, I think, and look at, we're worrying about a population, um, one population, and not worrying about the
hmm
effects of that one population on the other, when that's exactly why we are trying to have equality. So we have
Yeah.
equality for everybody, but yet we want to take equality away from female athletes or
Yeah.
female.
And I think my last thought on the issue is, I don't know that anybody as an athlete, and there are some, obviously some people would say I'll use anything I possibly can to my advantage. But for the most part, when there's high school kids in these situations, they're not looking to create an advantage for themselves. So they just want to be able to compete like everybody else. So I don't think that, you look at it and they're saying, well, I wanted to do this because it gives me the most advantage. Now that this is the situation, maybe they will, but I don't foresee that, or I don't think that was the case.
Right. Captain Jimmy, mentally ill. We're not going to delve too much into that. But I understand where you're getting at is that,
Yeah.
yes, they need to have, you know, see doctors and counseling to see, because the issue is this, and again, we're getting a little off topic.
Right.
You have to be really careful. I mean, the research shows that transitioning from male to female because of you feel that you are
One or the
female
other.
trapped in
Yeah.
a male's body, or however they put it, doesn't decrease depression. It doesn't decrease suicide rate, that
Mm-hmm.
transition. And I think what happens is it's easier right now. And as a society, we don't want we don't want to take on the hard tasks. We don't want to, I guess, tackle the hard issues. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, it's taking
head
the easy
on. We
route.
want to avoid. We want to take the easy route, and so instead of actually trying to figure out if that is the case, we're like, okay, yeah, we'll let you transition instead
Yeah.
of trying to get down. Because I mean, you're talking about, they're trying to pass a law where you allow, a 10, 11-year old to transition from one sex to another. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
I'm a parent. I mean, I'm the
If
parent.
if
They're
my
not an
son at the
adult.
age of 10 would have came and said, Dad, I think I'm a girl, I'd been like, okay. And then maybe put something in the back of my head, but I'm not going to run out and have him start to transition, because
Yeah.
3, 4 years later, he could be like, oh yeah, huh, it could be a phase. Kids say stuff like
Right.
that all the time when they're young,
Yeah.
because things that they hear.
Yeah. And biologically, they are one or the other. I
Right,
mean, that's so. Yeah. I mean,
right, exactly,
that's what it
exactly.
is.
Chromosome,
Yeah. That's what they
genetically, there
are. Yeah.
can never be the other gender. I
Right.
totally agree with that. And the people that say they all, there's these studies out there, there's thousands of genders. No, there's not. There's two. There's two genders.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, and like I said, you were saying this, and you're right on that comment. Children really don't get to make that decision. They're not emancipated from their parents. Their parents are making those decisions when they're young.
right.
They really don't get that choice, and I don't think they should either. I mean, this isn't like that's not the type of society
Yeah.
I think that we
Th-
we want to
This
have.
isn't
Yeah.
asking a kid what kind of flavor ice cream they want.
No, no, this is
You
something
know,
that's a very important thing about their body and what's going on and what their future is going to be. So,
and
um,
and that's where I think, people that push back on this stuff, that say
yeah,
that, oh, people are just anti-trans. That's not what I'm
no,
saying. What I'm
no, not
saying
at
is,
all.
you
Right,
shouldn't jump to that. A parent shouldn't just say, because there's issues with their child at a young age, that they're transgender.
right, right.
Get them counseling. If you want to get a plan in place for when they are in their teens or early adulthood, that, yeah, okay, they are transgender, okay, fine, then you have a plan in place.
Right.
But all of a sudden, yes, I agree, yeah, there's lots of that that are regretting having the reassignment surgeries.
And I think they're rushing into it, like you just
Right.
said, Coach.
But
Yeah.
that's because exactly the decisions are being rushed.
Right.
They're used to the transition used to be a long process. It would
Mm-hmm.
take years to transition. Now you could have the surgery within a year.
Right.
There used to be you have to go through so much psychological work. You have to then, once you go through that, be on the hormones for so long, and then
Mm-hmm.
live as the opposite sex for so long, like dress as them daily and do all those things
Right.
before a surgeon would even consider an operation. Now it's like, oh, I probably could walk into a reassignment clinic tomorrow, and they'd probably schedule me for my first operation
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just
Exactly.
because I say, oh, I
Exactly.
think I'm a female.
And ultimately, this is giving one way or the other, depending on what sport it is or whatever, an advantage where one shouldn't exist. And it would be no different than if well, we're just talking about it biologically, but there's no different than if you were to take some type of banned substance
Right,
to give yourself an advantage. You're giving yourself an advantage. I want people to be equal. I want them to have opportunity that's the same, but at the same time, this isn't the way to go about it by creating an advantage for one and creating a disadvantage for the other, 100
right,
or whatever. I mean, thousand, millions of people, because 1,000 people are getting an advantage and 1,000,000 people are getting a disadvantage.
right.
I'm just making up numbers. I'm not, yeah. So,
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like yeah, the MMA fighter.
right.
Yeah, exactly,
It's
exactly.
not. It's not fair.
It's not
There's an
fair.
advantage there. Yeah.
That'd be like me or anybody. Let's just take anybody in the NFL right now. You
Right.
get hired as an NFL coach, you transition to a female. Oh, I'm the first ever head coach in the NFL. I mean, is that really a milestone?
Yeah.
Is that really a milestone? And like all this, exactly, and it's a danger for real women's health. Exactly. This is a huge, huge health risk, especially when you're talking about like MMA and fighting.
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly.
track and
Yeah.
field not so
Which,
much, but whenever there's physical contact, this would
yeah.
cause huge health risks. Injury factors would go times 10. Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's,
That's why I
it's like
just, yeah,
taking
you're
steroids.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talked about that probably before you were on, Captain Jimmy. That's like if you're going to allow a transitioning boy to a female sport, you should almost then say the females can take steroids
Right.
to kind of level the playing field. I mean that's what it would be like.
Right. Which is also something that, I mean, those are banned. You're giving
Right.
yourself an
Right.
advantage by doing it. So, yeah.
So, but yeah, it's like all these milestones that are made because you have a male transition to a female. Now, oh, there's the first female this. Well, no, not really.
Right.
Like they talk about, the first man to have a baby.
Yeah.
A man can't have a baby.
It's not biologically
Not
possible
biologically
to do
possible.
that. Right. I
Okay,
mean, they can become a woman and have a baby, but that's not biologically possible for
right.
them to
So a
have been.
transgender woman,
Yeah.
transitioned to being a male, had a baby.
Right.
Still biologically a female.
Right. Yeah.
But,
Exactly.
it's just this is where this argument again. This is bigger than sport.
It is. Yeah.
But again, we're a sports show,
Right.
so
We're
that's what we
talking about
focus
that.
on.
Yeah.
But it, th- this whole topic, and I don't know what the perfect answer to it is. I don't think there is a perfect answer. This is still, you know, something so new within the world. Still, it's come a long
Hmm.
ways. The science of it, and the study of it, but where I guess we're at, people would say probably more morality wise, in society, in
Hmm.
that. people will probably like put us in that category or we're anti-trans, which we're not. We're not, again, we're not saying that. We're saying this. Yeah, exactly. And I agree, and I think again that this is going a little bit outside the realm of this conversation, but I
Right.
think
It
as a
does. Yeah.
society, it has not, we used to be a society of we could all have our own opinions. And as
Yeah.
long as we listen to each other, we can come to an understanding, even if we agree to disagree on something, and then
Hmm.
walk away, still be friends. Now it's either if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. If you don't agree with me, you're wrong. We hate each other.
Right.
Hey, I've been told by some people I know
Yeah.
because
I don't. I don't get that. I mean,
I don't
we
consider
disagree.
myself, you know, right or left. I'm middle. Which
Yeah.
when you tell people that, oh, you can't be middle. You have to have an opinion, left or right. No, I don't.
No,
You're
I don't have to.
you're
Yeah.
telling me I have to, but I understand opinions from both sides, and I agree with some issues on
Yeah, I
both
agree with some, and
sides.
I don't agree with others. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know. I know what you're saying, and I think when it comes to sports, we as a show have kind of tended to stay, at least try to stay away from some of the political stuff. With this particular topic, I think we had to touch on it because it's so impactful in the world of sports,
Right.
and close to you, Coach. I mean, like you said, you are a coach right now in high school sports, so I think we had to really go over it. We
Right. So
had to
it's going to
tackle
be
it.
interesting because
Yeah. Yep.
what stops a struggling NBA player from saying, I am going to identify as a um, female and playing in the
Yeah.
WNBA.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's that. What is that? Is that the next thing? I
Yeah.
mean, that's yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh,
Oh, yeah. Well, and we actually talked about that at the top of the show.
yeah. Well, and
Sean
we're not
Watson
done yet.
and his own stuff. Yeah.
We can transition back because I think we've talked the
Through this one quite a
transgender
bit. Yeah. Yep.
because this will tie into our Beavis comment of the day. Yes, Deshaun Watson, he's done. Yeah, he is done in
Right.
these after David Culley hiring. I think he's done. That is not an individual he wanted to see as a head coach. I don't think he was informed at all that they were going to hire this guy. I don't think anybody was informed. They were even interviewing this guy. Um,
I don't think anyone knew about it. I mean, no one was talking
no.
about it.
So I really think
Normally Adam Schefter or somebody is going to talk about it, but
so. I think Deshaun Watson, the best, and I said this earlier, the best thing he can
yeah,
do, don't come on social media, don't say anything negative. Call your agent and say, you either trade me or I sit. Jerry Jones will not make an offer for Deshaun Watson
right.
because
I agree.
he would have to pay Deshaun Watson more than what would have paid Dak Prescott. And if you're not going to pay Dak Prescott that money, you're not going to get Deshaun Watson for it.
Right.
Because if you look at that, yeah, I think Deshaun Watson's a better quarterback. So don't get me wrong with that. But in that offense, Dak Prescott would have, if he wouldn't have gotten hurt, he would have had a much better season than Deshaun Watson. The Cowboys probably would have won the NFC East, and Dak Prescott probably would have been in the MVP conversation, not Deshaun Watson. What I
Hmm.
think should happen, and again, this would be the best scenario for Deshaun Watson, I think. Either the best would be getting traded to Miami. I don't know if that'll happen. It all
Hmm.
depends on if Miami is kind of souring on taking Tua. But you'd have to trade away the number 3 pick and Tua to get Deshaun Watson at the minimum. I think you'd have to trade
I
probably
think you'd have to trade
two
another
first
pick
round
to
draft
split that.
picks.
Yeah.
So this year's and next year's because um, I yes and no. I think Cleveland would be. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not. I think Cleveland will be a playoff team. I'm not sold on Cleveland.
No.
I am
Still,
going to
me neither.
disagree with the Captain Jimmy on the New York Jets. I think Robert Saleh is really going to change the culture around there.
Right.
I think
If you would have
that
said that last year, absolutely,
right,
with Adam Gase in
absolutely,
charge. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. But I think what's going to happen the more likely thing that's going to happen, you are going to see the Jets offer the number 2, Sam Darnold, and maybe next year's first round draft pick for Deshaun Watson, because it's going to be another high first round draft pick next year. And if I can get a deal, even if I have to give up a little bit more, maybe they say a third round pick in there, if I'm the Jets, I do it. Because I don't want to take a rookie that is unknown, that may or may not be good, when I can get
take a younger guy who's already proven.
I get a proven commodity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But the thing with the Jets, a lot of the Jets' issues were Adam Gase. I'm just going to say that, because if you look at that, there were games where the Jets were in the game. The Jets were in the game. They should have beat the Raiders. They were in a couple of other games late, and then some bonehead decisions by Gase, and then it ended up being a two-score.
He doesn't even know. I mean, really, we talked.
He didn't even know who was playing.
He didn't even know who was calling plays, and he's calling plays, and he said he called plays, and he said he didn't, and that guy didn't know his
so
from a hole in the ground.
When I look at the Jets as a whole this past season, if you had even a competent coach, I think they would have been a 4 or 5 win team. Again, still not good.
Still not good. Nope.
But better. And it wouldn't have been such a train wreck. That's so.
Yeah. And hey, look, if the Jets are going to be like the Bills, from a time when they were winning a bunch of games, then good on them. I mean, that's what the Jets want to be. You'll have some time before you get into the point where you are winning as much as you are and complaining about winning and not winning a Super Bowl. Right now, if the Jets are winning 10 games in a season and then 10 or 11 games the next year, that's magical for them. They'd be happy. They'd be great with that. So
absolutely. Yeah. So, but again, we're getting off topic a little bit. So Deshaun Watson, I think he's going to end up either in Miami or New York. I know his preferred destination is Miami. Again, we'll talk about all this stuff after the Super Bowl, because we'll start breaking down each division and who we feel the favorites are for next year, and what teams need to do, et cetera, and then start breaking down draft and so on and so forth, because this is an NFL heavy show. Because there's always stuff you can talk about in the NFL. That's the one great thing about it. Unlike other teams, other leagues, because other leagues tend to not have very long off seasons, or interesting ones.
Right. Yeah.
So you usually know who's signing where before free agency even starts in other leagues. So, all right. So
I think the last thing here would be the Beavis comment of the week.
Yes, we got the Beavis comment of the week. Like I said, it's not a great one, because again, I didn't listen to much because I didn't want to listen to the Tom Brady talk. But this is about the new head coach of the Houston Texans. And let's just listen. It's short, but it's going to make you go, interesting.
Okay. A little bit of Joe Judge. We didn't know much about Joe Judge either when he went.
It went.
Win or not, but it reminds me a little bit of Joe Judge. We didn't know much about Joe Judge either when he went to the Giants, and you saw that team play hard for him, and they did all the right things for the season, but they were still bad. I mean, I know they came.
So David Culley is like Joe Judge.
I mean, I don't know if that's high praise or not, because in the same breath, then she says
they were bad.
They were still bad.
But they played hard, and they played
hard, but they were still bad.
And they did everything right.
Yeah, well, and that's the Beavis part. I mean, they definitely did not do everything right.
And this is a reporter from the Dallas, Houston area. I don't even know her name. But I found that today when I was doing research on David Culley. I just couldn't. I was just like, yep, there we go.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's a good one.
I didn't have a lot to go on because I did. Again,
Right.
I don't want to listen to how great Tom Brady is. I know how good he is.
We know. We don't need to hear about it for the
Next
10,000th
week
time.
and a half. So,
I mean, this is good because I think, you look at it and you say, okay, we still don't really know if Joe Judge is a good coach.
right.
I mean, we've got one season of him being in New York, and they had a losing record, and it was probably a little better than people expected because I think they finished 6-10.
Yeah,
So
something like
you
that.
looked at them, they played hard and they did pretty good, but overall, was that really good? No,
Right.
I don't think it was good. It was
And then saying,
mediocre.
well, they almost made the playoffs of the NFC East.
Yeah, I mean that's not really saying a whole heck of a lot. Let's
Yeah.
be honest here, people.
So,
Come on now. So
yeah.
So yeah, comparing him to Joe Judge coming out of nowhere is not really a high praise or even really a great comment to make. So I think that's deserving.
And if I'm Deshaun Watson and you compare my new coach to Joe Judge, I'm like, oh hell no.
Right, I don't want to be in that situation at all. No, not even
Because I'll tell you right now, any player that's worth anything on that roster is looking at this and be like, this is a dumpster fire. This is going to be a train wreck. Oh my Lord. Get me out of here.
Yeah, and the tenured guys are going to want to get out of there.
Yeah.
So,
well,
like you said, I think it's guaranteed that Watt's going to be out of there for sure.
There's rumors. There's two big rumors I am hearing, and I'm reading is that Watt and Hunter Henry to Green Bay in the offseason. Yeah. Whether that happens, again, the Packers have to probably restructure Aaron Rodgers' deal, give him an extension, extend that money out, maybe rework Devontae Adams' deal. And they'll probably go to the Smiths and say, hey, we'll give you another 2 years, extend it out. They'll stretch people's contracts out to try to win a Super Bowl. And I think this is a good time for them to do that because I think the players want to win. They don't. There's not, besides Rodgers, I don't think there's a player on the roster that has a championship. So, I think they'll be willing to do that.
Well, and you got 2 years in a row of making the title game and not passing the title game. Players are hungry. They want to get back there and they want to do it. So, before Andy Reid won the Super Bowl, you would say that was Andy Reid. I mean, how many times did his teams in Philadelphia make it to the NFC title game and not get there to the Super Bowl? And they had one and they lost that one. But, there were several before that they lost. And that creates this fire. And I think you're right. The players are bought into it. They want to win a title and they think they can move some pieces around and hope that you can come back and do it again. Right. So, yeah.
So, but there we have it, everybody. It's been a show. So, unless you have anything else, Lone Wolf, we're going to wrap her up here.
No, I was just going to say thanks to everybody who jumped in and participated. We had a couple people that had come in over the course of the show, and then obviously we had somebody that was participating, so we appreciate that. To all the listeners, anybody who commented or listened, it helps fuel the show, so that's a good thing.
So thank you everybody for joining us. If you listen to us recorded, hope you enjoy it. If not, everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you next week, and yes, next week we will delve into the Super Bowl. Not that we want to, but kind of obligated to. We are
I have to. Yeah.
So enjoy the week. Talk to you next Thursday, and have a good night.
Have a good night.